Madam President, board members, first I'd like to acknowledge our administrative team who's here tonight, who are here almost every meeting, so thank you very much for all your support in helping us put this together. Mr. Palladino did an incredible job with this budget after we passed it through technical review, which you're all aware of. And as we're waiting here for to get these lights down a little bit, let's talk about the process on how this works. We obviously meet in committee to discuss the finances. We take in consideration all the needs of the district. The board committee then goes back and forth with us in trying to, obviously put the best number out there for the taxpayers with keeping all these programs in mind. So I want to commend this board and this committee for these meetings that we've had. Thank you, Mr. Parapato. This was a tough budget, probably one of the toughest that I've ever been involved with. I think it's easy to just look at numbers and try to make cuts, but when you're coming off a situation where because of a tremendous tragedy or the pandemic and all those monies that were provided and all those programs that were put in place to try to sustain those programs is very difficult. I don't think people realize how hard that is. But here we are for next year's 2024-25 budget. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Parapato. Can we get that thing out of the middle, or what is that thing? It's just going to bother me. But Mr. Vargas, are you here? Is he here? All right. Well, let's get that note to Mr. Vargas, thanking him for that icon, the new trademark years ago that he put together for us that caused some issues. So I want to thank him again one last time. So. Well, been some talk. We've been joking, Mr. Sheldon and myself, about this presentation being the same over and over again. That's done purposefully, obviously. I could obviously put a new PowerPoint together every year, but then I think it would look like the traveling salesman or the car showman. This doesn't have any bells and whistles, right? This is a budget presentation, and it's consistent year after year, so you can compare the differences. That's designed by design. That's why we do it. There are some different slides every year, different things, but the goals are the same. The goals are the same. Excuse me. This board will be meeting in a retreat soon, be talking about a new set of strategic goals with a new superintendent. So maybe some of these things change, but for over the last 9 years at least, we've been talking about some of these things because we were so behind because of different reasons that we don't like to talk about, but this is what the budget's about, right? Our district goals, the enrollment assumptions. I don't know how many times I can talk about that before I leave here, but I will try to do my best to talk about it as many times as I possibly can. School level goals, special education, which we've done an incredible job, Mr. Klein and his team, Mr. Puglia, Mr. Costa, and Mr. Vargas as well. Over the years I've been here, have done an incredible job bringing kids back to least restricted environments here, saving a ton of money. But those percentages still go up. I think we're almost at 11, 12% in the district, special ed, but a lot of those students are here. Technology is ever changing, ever growing, all these things we have to keep up with, right? Don't forget, we were a one-to-one initiative before COVID, right? We were the ones where Senator Ruiz called me on the phone and said, how did you get all your laptops for all your kids? Oh, we had those years ago, Senator. Oh, so we've always been one step ahead, and we want to continue to do that. Facilities upgrades, facilities upgrades, obviously in a week, we are looking for some nice bids on our middle school expansion project. We really have done a lot of work on there with our architect, so hopefully we get some bids to complete that project. Revenue projections, appropriations, below adequacy spending, which is my favorite few slides, what the administrative costs are, and then of course what you're all waiting for is that tax impact, where we were and where we are. So that's what tonight's about. Mr. Parapato. Next slide. Get that thing out of there, please. All right, so the biggest thing in any budget, major piece of the pie are the contractual obligations, right? So we need to fund those employment contractual obligations. We have 2 units out in negotiations right now. So this is what really is the bulk of some of the costs that we see here in the budget. We want to always review and restructure personnel needs. We talk about CUSAC and our programs and different alignments. We want to continue to grow the curricular and academic programs. We've talked about expanding the ROTC program. We're adding a culinary academy, et cetera. So some of those things will continue to happen. Capital reserves funds, we want to use those as we can to create spaces, do other facilities projects, some outdoor beautification projects. Our Belleville Bridge program was successful several years ago, so we want to continue to make sure that happens so that kids don't suffer the learning loss that is prior to the COVID learning loss, that students get that lose some of that retention every summer, right? It's real. The summer regression is real, so we think we're doing a great job with those students that take advantage of that program. It's a free program for our parents. The summer programs as well at the middle school, hopefully bring some more back to the high school. We're trying to work on that. I know Mr. Rhodes is working hard on that. The preschool universe is over 90%. We'll talk about that. Again, when I got here, it was like 8%. It's at 90% now. That's going to be an incredible thing for the future academic scores of this incredible district, for just everything, right? The equity lines are evening out a little bit. I don't know too many districts that don't have preschool for students. Parents either pay it out of their pocket or districts provide it. We didn't do that until we got here several years ago. And then sustainability goals, right? We're still working on a greenhouse. We have wind projects that are still kind of in the works, and of course solar, et cetera. Yes, sir, next slide. All right, so we're going to talk about enrollments. I've been talking about enrollments a lot. Very interesting. The preschool universe is almost at 97% as we ended April, and just an incredible thing. We've seen almost 200 students since last June. 200 students. Okay, some of those are from Sandy Lane, but those are still students to our population, and we see some numbers. We're talking, again, let's be very clear, and I'm going to continue to bring this up. We can talk about developments, we can talk about all those things. I think it's important to understand that I don't think you need to be really at a level of being a rocket scientist or anything to think that if there's a room and there's a space, people are going to live in it, okay? Yes. We are attracting a demographic with some of these high-end apartments or townhouses or whatever you want to call them, units, let's just call them units, with rooftop pools and spas and all that other great stuff. But at some point, that all goes away. I've been involved with this before. I'm probably one of the only leaders in the district right now in the entire municipality who has gone through developments before. That's probably a very true statement, okay? And I've seen it happen. I've seen the idea of pilots and, putting some parameters into places, and all of a sudden, those flip. There's a new owner, and the owner comes up and says, well, I can't afford this now. I can't afford this. What are we going to do? It's happened. It's happened in several districts I've been in. Doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen in a year. Doesn't happen in 5 years. But in 10 years from now, we have to be ready for that. And we're seeing some enrollment projections now, okay? We're seeing some enrollment projections now and things that are happening, and it has nothing to do with most of these developments. They're not even online yet, right? Some of the developments that are online, we have 10 kids from it, but nothing's online yet. The one across from School 10, I don't want to really mention any of them, but you know the names. When that one opens up, School 10 is in trouble. All right, when I got to district in 2015, there were 78 students in School 10. There's 150 students now. Those are real numbers. I'm not making those up. Okay, those are real numbers, all right? And it's just growing and growing. So regardless of what anybody wants to think isn't going to happen, I would rather someone 10 years from now come up here and say, hey, remember that bald guy, Tomko, that was here and he was the superintendent? He was wrong. I would love for somebody to say that. I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. So our enrollments are real issues. What you see, go to the next slide, because nobody knows what those numbers are. So the October 15th number, which is an ASA report where we have to report, there's 2 times a year that districts have to report numbers, and that's where you get aid, right? That's where you base aid from. One's the October 15th report, and then we do it again at the end of the school year. So the 2 numbers here, the black print is the ASSA number, and the red print is the current enrollments. The current enrollment as of April 30th, so a few days ago. Oh, actually, I checked it. Those are today. So that's where we're at, plus 36 for some of those schools. Okay, this will all be posted so you can see it a little better. Go ahead. And then we have plus 10 at the middle school, plus 47. So that's coming and going, all right? But we have like 199, 200, we're hovering 200 students of an increase already. It's 1.91 since September, almost 2% increase only since September. We had 5 students register last week or 2 weeks ago. It's like May. That affects our test scores, that affects our supplies. If those are students with special needs, that affects those numbers. All of those things are affected, right? So you have to think about that. These are real concerns. So as we cut and cut and cut, and then people move into district, right? We start having, there's a domino effect I don't think people think about, okay? All right, next one. Our free and reduced lunch applications, okay? This has become a big thing I've been talking about as well. I don't think a lot of people understand where we are. We're almost at 65% district-wide. We have 63 qualifying right now, 63%. 25% of those families do not have lunch applications on file. That means that we're paying for their food. The taxpayers are paying for that food right now. We're doing everything we possibly can to fill out all these applications. We can't fill them out for people, and we can't force people to fill them out. So that's a concern. You could say, oh, well, it's not our problem, but guess what? It is, because at the end of the day, the board then has to pay through the tax levy for those meals. Kids cannot have cheese sandwiches anymore, like when I was a principal back in the day, right? That's shaming. You can't do that, all right? So if a parent chooses not to pay for lunch, kid still eats anyway. Somebody has to pay for that, right? So it's a concern all throughout the state post-COVID, but a very big concern here in Belleville. That increases our rates and federal and state reimbursement. We have one building right now at 70% free and reduced lunch, 70%. And I said it the other day at my speech, $59,000 for a family of 4, that's considered poverty, $59,000, okay? Think about that, 4 people, $59,000. Next. So what we're looking for these enrollments, we're looking at estimating 239 students for next year. We're almost on the money this year. It's close. All these projections that we got also, this is a state projection, but we had our own independent demographer do this. I'm looking for all the demography reports of all the developments in town. I've just asked for them. I haven't gotten them yet. I don't think they exist. But the board had ours done. We went to every one of those developments, and they did a demography report on it. And these are the numbers that are even going to be higher within the next 10 years. The conservative growth is 4.44% as per the state gave us those numbers. And again, percent month to month during this year. It's almost at 1.9% now since September. So our school level goals are some of the things we talked about already. The core mission, of course, our educational foundation of programs, which is ELL, math, and science. We want to maintain those programs. Okay, there was some talk about cutting textbooks. There's no such thing as textbooks only anymore. Textbooks also include prescriptions to online things, et cetera. So it doesn't make any sense to me to cut in those areas when that's our educational core. I just think that's kind of negating what we do. These academies that we've put in place, our team's done a great job. We had a leadership academy that we're still trying to get off the ground, which would take some of our elite students and put them in a new, basically a new school. The Culinary Academy I talked about already, Public Safety Academy, teaching and administrative things that we were looking at for some internships as well. Personnel needs, we're always looking at those. The MLL program, which is for language learners from other countries. We just saw CASA. We have a new area there for those parents and those students because we're looking at the current students, not the future students. They're important, but the current students are most important. The current families are most important. The needs of those individual families and students. So we want to make sure that's taken care of. Professional development, as always, technology initiatives, outdoor facilities in the footprint for extracurricular needs, maintain what we have already, and then social emotional wellness programs. I know people think that this is something that has to go away, but I couldn't even tell you the amount of times that we have threat assessments here or that we have our wellness teams involved in things. It's not like it used to be. There's a lot of need and a lot of care for these students that they're not getting in other places. And The proof is when parents call and say this district is, or they may even call some of you out there or put it on the parents page and the district did nothing about this. Well, I said to a parent the other day, there was an issue going on. I said, well, did you contact the parent, like at the house? Well, I don't know where they live. I said, well, you could easily find out. I mean, just ask around, right? I have 4 kids. I've had issues with my kids, and I've gone to the doors, and I've knocked on and said, can we talk about our kids having an argument? Something happens over the weekend, and we get a phone call Monday morning. They had a fight Saturday night. You have to do something about it. What are you talking about? Right? What about English, math, stuff like, so there's a whole big component here that I think people aren't understanding. So we have to maintain those goals. Very important. Because without that well-roundedness, we have kids that are still out of district because they don't want to come back. I don't know what else to say about that except that's the truth. Next one, Jack. We talked about special education. Those projections are always tough. There's evaluations, occupational therapy, physical therapy. If every parent here wrote a letter tomorrow and said, I want my child tested, we would have an issue, right? But guess what? Someone has to pay for it. It's very difficult to project these numbers. You get a family of 5 kids, all special needs with an IEP from another district come in town, and we have to support that, right? So Mr. Klein and our team does a great job with the projections. But again, these are real costs. And we want to keep enhancing that program, enhancing the life skills initiatives, because unlike the past, that 12% number also counts for our scores and ranking. That's another hurdle, right? Our ELL population, our MLL population is about 10% or a little bit over. Our special ed population is at 12%. We're at almost 65% free reduced lunch. Those are 3 hurdles that really do affect scores, okay? Especially the MLL population, right? Because how do we expect students to go home and get reinforcement if their individual parents are new to the country, or can't speak the language, et cetera? So that's why we're working on some of those things. Next. Okay, and again, we want to continue to return students to the least restrictive environments and continue our tuition programs like we had in some of those, the COVE, et cetera, some of those life skills programs that are actually bringing back tuitions. Not millions of dollars a year, but again, sustainable things every year that's helping us generate some revenue. So, thank you. Next. Technology, we want to continue that core mission of making sure that we support the entire district, everyone, from parents to teachers to our students, of course, which is our most important commodity. We want to expand that department because as we grow, we need more hands-on. Continue to enhance the infrastructure at all times. I go to other districts, and they don't have a quarter of the stuff we're having, and I can't believe it. I can believe it, but I can't believe that they're surviving, and they're not. That's the problem. Our CASA and parent university programs are going to provide professional development opportunities. CASA is that Center for Academic Achievement and Success. Success and Achievement. So you're going to see a lot of technology programs down there as well. Some facilities goals, again, we have to maintain all those systems. What happened before I got here is all those things were end of life. They weren't maintained properly. That can't happen. You have to maintain, repair, and replace, right? Maintain, repair, and replace as it goes. So we're pretty vested in that. The preventative maintenance, the district vehicle fleet, all those things. Safety glass at the auditorium so we can use that balcony up top. We always talk about air quality. We constantly do air quality. Bless you. We constantly do air quality tests. We do samples. So we're way ahead of that. The same thing with the water quality tests. We don't wait for people to tell us to do that. We're still working on that horticultural center, which hopefully will be done soon. We had a little snag with some of the permits that we needed, so we took care of that. But that's going to be a nice project out on Greylock Parkway. The bus depot should be ready for this year. The buses are going to be by School 9. We purchased the property next door so that we can come out of that lease at St. Peter's, hopefully. And the lighting upgrades. We're constantly doing lighting upgrades so that we can, obviously stay with the most desirable lighting in district for our students. All right, more highlights. The academic program initiatives. Classroom space for increased enrollment and class size. Let's be very clear. We didn't repurpose classrooms to put administrators in them. I don't know where that came from, but it's completely the opposite. That's why we had to lease buildings to take administrators out of classrooms, because even though people think the administrative team is not necessary and they could work in a corner on like a upside down garbage can or something like that, it's not true. It's not true. So that didn't happen. So we want to continue to create classroom space. We need to finish that middle school expansion project. We talked about the contractual obligations. RTI, is something that's in effect here that's helping us grow in all of our buildings. That's what we need to talk about, growth. I know people like to throw aggregate numbers in there, but again, one day, hopefully, a commissioner of education somewhere will understand that not every district is equitable in that area, and you can't just say, all right, these kids over here are the same as these kids over here. It doesn't happen that way. So we need to talk about growth, not just overall aggregate scores. Because I tell any superintendent I go to, I go, give me your 5 top kids, I'll give you my 5 top kids, and we'll go to battle with you academically. Let's do it, right? That should be the ranking. That's what we should do. We should get everybody down at Rutgers or something and have a big bowl like that. And then obviously fiscal stability. That's why we're here tonight, to try to do the best we can for taxpayers and the programs. All right, so we're spending 73 less than the regional limit. It used to be a little bit higher. We're doing a little better there, but we spend less than the regional limit. Regional limit's 2776, we're 2703. That's calculated by the Department of Education. Next. These numbers are going to go quickly. Again, these will be loaded up right after the vote tonight. So you can see them and look at them a little closer. Our operating budget is for revenues. The operating budget's $118 million plus 118.6. We're looking at local tax levy increases, and there's some unrestricted surplus that we use to offset tax points. So we use the surplus that we've saved to offset your taxes, which is allowed, okay? Right now it's 1.6 tax points, which is probably, I don't know, don't quote me, but I think that's probably somewhere in the $500,000–600,000 range, I would think. Next. Here's some projections over the years. We went back from 2017 for the general tax levy. Taxes in 2017 were $39,764,229. The tax levy that we proposed is $49,992,133. So it's an increase with allowable cap adjustments and almost $4 million in cap adjustments for what they used to call SGLAs. But those are some allowances for enrollment, transportation, special ed, et cetera. Next. State aid projections from last year was $54,384,062. This year is $12 million and change more, which is $66,585,432. Incredible thing that the governor did for us again to, yes, abide by his promise to fully fund the district. So again, there's an election coming up. We all know how this goes. Hopefully this aid stays at least flat. Or if a new governor comes in, no matter what party he or she is in, hopefully they're not cutting some aid, because if some of this aid does go away, we're in a lot of trouble. All right, so let's just be very clear. We're in a lot of trouble. Next slide. Some of the appropriations, the increase to the general fund is $14,455,291. Some of these appropriations include your SDA assessment, which is for buildings and whatnot, your capital outlay, and your charter school payments, which we have to pay for students to go to charter school. And believe it or not, that's a rate set by the state, and the rate for the charter schools is actually a little bit more than what we spend per pupil here, so it's not a wash. When people say, oh, but there goes somewhere else, that's not how it works. We're losing money. And the biggest problem with charter school payments is we can't project how many kids go to the charter school, so we can't budget for it, right? So when January comes and Mr. Palladino gets the bill, he's like, where am I going to get this money from? So it's not a problem just in Belleville, it's a problem all over. So here's appropriations from one year to the next. Here it is again, $104 million versus $118 million. And those are some of the lines that you can see in the general fund, which is regular instruction, special ed, et cetera, employee benefits, charter schools. $1.9 million for charter schools we're budgeting for. The realized revenue, the realized appropriation last year was $1.68 million. Okay. So initially when we came to the board during our workshop as well, this was the initial proposed tax impact. the tax point that we talked about before, as per, I guess per Mr. Esposito, give him a shout out, is 312,516. So every time I talk about a tax point, it's $312,000. We were looking at a 10.29% increase to general fund and debt service together. That included a bunch of things that we needed, plus the board's desire to say, wait a second, if we're paying $500,000 already to offset the cost of food that we can't get for free, right, which is about 1.5 points, well, why don't we just give everybody free food? What would that cost us? So that's what you do for technical review, right? You meet, if you do it the right way, I'm not saying every district does this, but I'm going to tell you this is the right way, okay? You sit down with your board early on, say you guys represent the community, you're 1/7 of the community, what do you want, what do you need? Boom, we put it in for technical review, because after technical review, you can't really add stuff. Well, I guess you can, but it's probably a big pain to do that. So you put it all in first, right? You see what everybody wants, and then you start cutting back. Okay? One of the issues here is that we have this workshop, which is great to hear everybody, but everybody thinks that's a whole, oh, once they hear that, they're going to chisel it back anyway. Of course we are. Everybody does that. Nobody comes out with an original technical review and then doesn't cut the budget. I'm telling you right now, it's not a trick. It's reality. It's called being an administrator. This is what we do. Again, you put everything out first, and then you cut back a little bit. So this was the original levy was 10.29, and on a $413 a year assessed for assessed property at $275,500. So, and then obviously it goes up from there. 675. Yeah, it should be 750. Sorry, Matt. That should be 750. Yeah, I think so. The original one. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. We only looked at this like 50 times, but we missed it. Yeah, that's 750. You're right. So the bottom, if you have a $500,000 home assessed, not what it's worth, assessed, you're paying 750. Next one. Okay, so why the 2.29% tax increase? This is stuff we talked about. Most of it was we had a lot of PERS increases, Social Security increases, dental, et cetera. We added some security staff because we cut back on some of that last year. Special ed tuitions, program restructure for the language learners, all these different things. The negotiated agreements, different positions, home instruction coverages was automatic $6.7 million. So again, that's where the 10.29 came in. And of course, you know, the expiration of those COVID funds, and then also that food, feeding entire student population, which was almost $2 million. Again, just so you know as well, we have 3 schools right now that qualify for free lunch for every student because they have such high poverty level in those neighborhoods. I'm not suggesting that. I know the board's looking into that, but I think that changes the entire dynamic of the neighborhoods and district, right? So you got to be really careful with that. But I think we're headed there. So it's something that that you all need to be aware of. So the general fund revenue increase was $16.8 million, and then the net effect was, the impact was $16.8 million. There was 0 net effect. That's where we got the 10.29% tax increase from the original word from the board. So then, of course, we worked, and we needed to cut some stuff out. So we made $2,750,000 in cuts. After speaking with the board, we took $100,000 out of some curriculum programs that we have to cut back on some of the supplies that we were getting. Textbooks, we took $100,000 out of that, and some licenses. Some of those areas we made deals with vendors last year for 2-year payments. So we can't really negate that, just so we can get these programs in quicker, and they didn't lag. We didn't lag behind an extra year. Paraprofessionals for the increased ML population, we cut back on some of those, hoping that we won't need that. But again, that's something we're crossing our fingers on. Rental of land, that's more leases for more enrollment issues. Ms. Paladino and I were looking at some places because we think the enrollment's going to expand. So again, we're having a hard time talking to the township about enrollment, obviously. And we have plans in place at all the schools. But we would need the town's help on that. And really there's only a few councilmen that are coming to the table, and we really can't talk about it anymore. So we're trying to find ideas because, The state doesn't allow trailers anymore as easily as you think they are. And once you have a trailer here, it's $1 million, I think it's $1.5 million a trailer. It makes absolutely no sense. But we're getting close at some of the schools. We have students now, we have sections during registration that kind of stop at a certain time because we're full, and kids go to different schools, right? They don't live in that neighborhood. And then we have to bus some of those students because it's not their fault, it's our fault, right? So that's a problem. So that's rental of land. We put $100,000 aside. We took $100,000 out of that. We took the $1.95 million out to feed all the students. The PERS payment, which is $100,000 out, which gets us very nervous because we're not sure about all those things that we have no control of, right? PERS is a pension system, so we're not really sure, so we're just kind of guessing or guesstimating. We're being told also that benefits are going up double digits again. So, you know, that's going to hurt really, really badly, but we don't know what that means. What does double digits mean, right? So it could be 10%, it could be 19%, right? So how do you budget for that? So we have to go by what our auditors say. Charter school tuition costs, we cut $100,000 out of that. I don't really necessarily agree with that, but we had to get to the bottom line somewhere because I think those charter schools are just going to start picking up a little bit more as more students start moving into town. Security salaries, we cut $100,000, and actual supplies in rooms, we cut $100,000. So 2.750 were the cuts, which brought us back to the new tax impact, which is $171 for a $275,000 home, assessed home, and $310 for a $500,000 home. Okay, so Mr. Palladino, board committees, excellent job getting that down. We're now down to 4.221% coming out of committee. We all felt comfortable with this, and that's why we're here tonight to try to sell it to everybody here in the room. So let's talk about different trends looking at the last 8 years, but we're talking about a 6-year trend position here, basically from 2019 to 2025. We put the 18-19 school year on there too because I think that was probably one of our lowest years. We really went in there and the board really wanted to cut. And that's the impact. So you see a lot of that in there on the average assessed home. But you also see that there was a reassessment sometime in there because the average assessed home was 238, right? So there was a lot of changes around that time. So I remember 2018-19 specifically, the board really went in there and wanted to make a hit. And, it hurts down the end of the road. And you'll see that slide in a minute, though. But that's where we are. So, again, 28 or 100, somewhere in there. We've been not too bad for continuing all these programs that we're having, including making all the cuts that we've made over those percentages. If you see, 2.7, 2.6, under 2 in 21-22, obviously we had COVID right around there, and then coming back from it, it's not sustainable. Even the cuts we made last year really hurt us this year. So here is a current day impact on those cuts. So I mean, it's easy math. We didn't do any type of economic compounding interest or anything. But if you took what it was over 7 years, all of those numbers we would have had in our budget, right? So we would have had $556,000 if we didn't make that first cut. So I'm talking about from the proposed budget, and then at the technical review, and then what the board wanted to cut after. If we kept the proposed budget in, which is usually what we think we need, right? Maybe a little wiggle room, we would have had all these monies realized still in the budget today, and we wouldn't be in some of these issues. 556, almost $500,000 the first year, 4.8 million the second year, which was our biggest hit, 3.2, 500, 330, and then another this year. Last year was 3.9 million was the cut when the board decided to help everyone out because everyone was hurting still, and we made those cuts. We lost $3.9 million in the tax levy. So this, if you add all those up, which is coming up soon, you'll see where we're at. Go ahead. Yeah. And that brings me to my favorite slide, which is below adequate spending. And let's first talk about the governor's promise to do the fair funding budgets. And he has. I think he's very close, if he hasn't done it, almost fully funded us on that side. But there's a slide here too that we'll see in a minute. When we talk about full adequacy, we're talking about the government share, which is tax, which is state aid, right? And then we talk about the tax levy, right? The tax levy has to be part of that fair funding formula. And what this is saying is that through everything now, we are still under adequacy with these new numbers, $7.2 million. Now, if you think about it, and you hear what people are saying, and they're saying the governor gave us the fair funding, right? We're totally funded by the government. That means that in order to be considered adequate with other districts of likeness, the tax levy has to increase by $7.2 million. It's common sense. There's nobody making anything up. That's how it goes. So that's like you going up to, or somebody coming up to you at your job and saying, I just want to let you know, you're inadequate. That's exactly what's being said to us, right? So it's saying if you want to be as adequate as everyone else, you need another $7.2 million. That's the reality, okay? So we keep talking about that. This is the state number. This is not our number, okay? That number was a lot lower when we were at the original 10%. I think we were at 10%. I think it was like 2 million or under, okay? So we were getting closer. We're back here, okay? And that's your difference. That's your report of the status after your tax levy cuts, your proposed budget, and it comes down to the adequacy spending limit of $7.2 million. Next, Jeff. Okay? State aid is not keeping pace, operational costs. Okay? That was for all the future. State aid not keeping pace. But now we're at the point where the next year's slide can't say that anymore, right? The board approves this tonight. This will be the state side, as long as they keep us flat, the state side will be, well, the governor kept his promise. Okay, now it's time for the community to step up, right? Next. So here's that historic adequacy spending, okay? When I first got here, it was $18 million, and we were in a lot of trouble. We did really well. We went all the way up. We almost made a big hit there, and now we're back to $7.4 million in order to be adequate, right? So we still have some work to do there. Next, Jeff. So this is a pie chart that just shows you exactly what we were talking about, all right? A fully funded budget, or a fully funded adequate budget on both sides. The state aid's in red, right? The tax levy's in orange. So if you look at the one on the right, fully funded, that's what it looks like, okay? And that's when you're adequate. We're on the left here. So you have the tax levy is in the orange, the state aid's in the red, and that's the part we're missing right there. That's the under adequacy piece. So we're getting closer, but it's really pretty far away. My fear is that as we continue to cut, because that's the thing we do, as we continue to cut, that number continues to get larger and larger and larger. And as all these other districts are doing different things with salaries or programs, et cetera, we're going to go backwards instead of forwards to where we were, backwards to where we were years ago. So this one I put together very, very quickly for you. If we didn't do any of those proposed cuts over those years, we would have gotten back 6.4 million. And right now we're at 7.2 million below adequacy. So it's very close to being completely funded if we just never did anything. And we just said, yep, let's pay our fair share every year, instead of now they're coming to us with these high numbers. And I still think the 4.2% is very low. I think it's very low. I'm not happy with it. I don't think it's going to be sustainable. I think we're going to be back in the same position next year, and it's going to look very tight. And I think you have to start looking at some programs and stuff, which I hope doesn't happen. So here's your adjusted revenues, your operating budget. Total operating budget is $115 million. Don't forget, $500,000 goes into the unrestricted surplus to help offset tax levy. There's your levy numbers again. 24-25 is $47 million. It's okay, you can leave it. Next. You want me to fire you, Jeff? We're looking for salaries, Jeff. Okay, your total tax levy over, so this is some tidbits that Mr. Palladino put together. I have to say it's his slide because I would never use that word, but these are some tidbits here. Over an 8-year period, district increased the property tax levy in total of $7.4 million. That translates to an average increase of about $934,000 a year. Right, interesting number. 8 years, that converts to an average about 1.8 each year of the property tax levy. So it's really interesting how it kind of comes together, and we can't sustain that over and over. We're under that 2% cap. You saw those numbers in between, and that's how it works out. General fund increase, 11 million. Next, Jeff. Here's your appropriations from last year to 104 million to 115 million. And let's also talk real quickly about, when individuals say, oh, the total operating budget went up 50 million from 10 years ago. Well, that also includes state aid that we were getting, new programs. It's not just we raised the tax levy. That's rhetoric, okay? When we get more state aid, obviously the operating budget increases. It has nothing to do with anyone spending more money. If you're getting more money from state aid and federal aid, obviously your operating budget goes up too. The same thing with positions, right? There's 190 positions just from the PEA grant. Okay, 190 new staff positions for preschool and preschool aides and a nurse and security, et cetera, just for preschool. So that's 190 somewhere in there just for that program. So all those increases aren't just people being hired and sitting around doing nothing. That's not what's happening. Here's our Belleville taxpayer dollars, one of my favorite slides. This is from last year. There's no new stuff, but this is the reality of it. Most districts, it's the other way. This has nothing to do with the mayor and council. They don't have a chance to vote on this. They have no power over anything, really, especially this, okay? So basically, this is just showing you where your dollar goes. The way it all works out, 47% of your dollar goes to the municipality. So when their taxes are lower, they're still getting a higher share. Think about it. And 38% to the school district, 13% goes to the county of Essex, the county libraries, and our library here gets under 1%, and then there's open space money there for parks and stuff like that, which is 0.4%. That's how your dollar's split up. Most districts, it's the opposite. School is what drives the dollar in the town, right? And most mayors get up and say, oh, it's got to go to them. Their budget's one. It's not like that here. Let's be very clear on that. It's the other way around. It's the other way around, okay? Think about those percentages. Next. Fund balance with total assigned. Again, if we had $10 million to spend anywhere, that would be great. We don't have that. We have capital repairs that we've done. And again, we make sure we put those aside because we're worried about other projects that might be end of life, and we can't go out for another referendum on that. So we have to make sure that we put some capital reserve aside, and a lot of that's restricted versus unrestricted. Which, again, just because people are asking questions about it, restricted surplus means there's capital reserve, maintenance reserve, unemployment compensation reserve that we have to put in there, insurance recoveries, and there's assigned reserve for future years that the state mandates us to do. That means that it cannot be touched. It's restricted. It has to be in there. You can't touch it. You can't just take the money and say, let's put it in and help out taxes. It's not how it works, okay? Next one. And there's unrestricted surplus, which obviously is unassigned fund balance, and that's where you can use some of those funds for things that you need to do, like offset the tax levy, et cetera. Today, Jeff. That's not it. All right, so real quick, we'll go through my budgeting. Again, $10 million. The audit report, we have $1 million in surplus that's unrestricted. All the rest is restricted. So to say we have $10 million in surplus means we're financially sound, we're savvy, we're hitting all those restricted areas, but you can't use that money for just anything you want to. We have $1 million that's unrestricted to use as we see fit. Next. Okay? My emoji, next. Okay, so again, we talk about budgeting and how there's line items and how there's different things. And year to year, you have proposed and you have actual at the end. And the whole idea is this. Boards of education should ask for the money that they need, and at the end of the year, they should have $0 left. Because if the board approves the money, they shouldn't have anything left except for a little bit of surplus like we all have on a rainy day in case something happens, etc. So that's what you're seeing. Next slide. Okay, our teaching salaries here, which I know come up every year, There's different positions and different categories. I'm sure Mr. Palladino will go over that when he gets some questions tonight. But our salaries are split up. We have full-time kindergarten teachers. We have 28% of our salaries are for special area teachers. Grades 1 to 5 is almost $8.5 million. There's extra compensation there, which I don't think people understand. When we can't find teachers, we have to pay our teachers to pick up extra periods, or if they have to watch a hallway or something, that's all extra compensation. That all adds up. It's not free. I know people think that everybody wants people to work for free, but that's not how it works. We have 90 full-time grade 1 to 5 teachers, 15 special teacher salaries in that area at 72%. And then we have teacher coaches that are helping to run our RTI programs and other things of that nature to help professional development. Excuse me, that was K to 5, 6 to 8, 6 is still in there. And still in that area, $5.5 million. We have 58 full-time teachers in those grades. Coaches' salary is there as well, percentage of that. And then the high school, it's almost $10.5 million just for salaries. The extra comp there is almost $1 million. So that means that if we can't find a teacher or we don't have a teacher that's full-time, so let's say we only have 4 more sections that we need, right? Every teacher has to teach 5 sections. We don't hire part-time teachers. So in order to save on the benefits, et cetera, each teacher will pick up a section. So each teacher gets an extra compensation of $12,000, $13,000 for the year, something like that. And that's part of that, plus those other periods for the high school. So that's where your bulk of your monies are. Go ahead. And then there's a preschool contribution to some of that too, which is $7.2 million for supplies and curriculum, et cetera. Paraprofessionals. Again, remember that number we were talking about, the proposed versus that? So that's your actual proposed number is $33.8 million. And all those things we just talked about. So I mean, it's a real number. It's a and that same thing as actual those other salaries and whatnot. The increase from last year, I'm sorry, from 23-24, the realized increase from 23-24 to 24-25 was $2.7 million. And that's it. So again, I want to congratulate the board for working with us to keep a lot of the programs intact, to just lose positions through attrition, through retirements, et cetera, because we know that we can maintain fiscal responsibility and hopefully hang in there for one more year with this it's pretty tight increase. So thank you very much, and I think I'll hand it back over to President Bennett-Meany.